Hello, I am Cody Ellingham, and this is the Transformation of Value. What is the connection between entrepreneurship, collaboration, and Bitcoin? How can you build a new business that grows the Bitcoin network while also creating profit and success for yourself? My first reading for you today is a short but prescient piece by an early Bitcoin writer that posits a radical model of thinking about business and entrepreneurship in the Bitcoin world. I don't agree with the entire piece as it is, but given that it has been over a decade since it was written, I think with a bit of reframing we can find some good points in the deeper themes of the piece. The author, Daniel Kraitwich, is an example of the kind of prodigious early writing that was taking place as Bitcoin emerged on the scene in the early 2010s at the confluence of libertarian and cypherpunk thought. On internet forums and mailing lists, this ragtag group seemed to be taking on the behemoth of the state and the banking system at the same time, and they produced some very interesting literature exploring what the outcomes of all of this might be. The Correct Strategy of Bitcoin Entrepreneurship by Daniel Kraitwich, 2014, with minor changes by me for spoken word presentation. We're all in this together. Bitcoin entrepreneurs have yet to appreciate fully the collaborative nature of the Bitcoin economy and its implications for entrepreneurial strategy. Every successful entrepreneurial act improves the Bitcoin economy and attracts more people in, thus raising the value of the coins. Each new service benefits everyone else who is already invested. Consequently, Bitcoin businesses do not necessarily need to see themselves as competitors to one another. Even if they have the same business model, they both have more to gain from the influx of new users from outside than by taking customers from one another. Furthermore, the growth of any Bitcoin business is limited ultimately by the growth of Bitcoin itself. Since the number of coins is strictly capped, the currency must grow with its price. This means that few businesses, if any, can be expected to earn a much better return than the coin itself over time. Entrepreneurs should therefore invest in coins, not businesses, because coins are where the profit is. In addition, if Bitcoin fails, then the Bitcoin businesses fail, so Bitcoin is less risky than any Bitcoin business. Bitcoin entrepreneurs should be less interested in making money than in making Bitcoin into money. An entrepreneur who follows that precept should generally be expected to be more successful than otherwise because the potential for Bitcoin itself is so much greater than any Bitcoin business they could invest in. Of course, Bitcoin cannot succeed without businesses, or at least some sort of entrepreneurship. What is the best way to fund ventures in an environment in which they are relatively poor investments? The trick I propose is to think of these ventures more as donations to the Bitcoin economy than as a profit-seeking venture. Any useful Bitcoin service will tend to make the Bitcoin price increase because it adds value to the network. It may therefore be perfectly rational for a Bitcoin investor to contribute their service to the economy for free. The success of such a business being desired by everyone who holds coins means such a business can be run more like a non-profit or open source project than a business. Thus, a new venture may attract investment even if it is not profitable, as long as it provides a service that the Bitcoin world needs. In mid-2013, Armory, an open source Bitcoin wallet project, received $600,000 in seed funding, even though nobody knew how it would eventually be monetized. These people have the right idea, but they shouldn't try to monetize it at all. It is obviously making all of the coins more valuable. Don't be a venture capitalist, be a speculative philanthropist. Labor is scarcer than ideas. The task ahead of us is monumental. The construction of a new financial economy to replace the one built around national currencies. This will take a lot of work. Unfortunately, a lot of work is being wasted right now. The venture capitalists are looking to invest in sharp teams with cool ideas, but the group of people that matters most is the entire network of Bitcoin users, and the idea that matters most is Bitcoin itself. Big new ideas get hyped up almost every week around here, and the Bitcoin economy will work a lot better if people would try harder to ignore them. There are lots of business ideas floating around and limited time to create them. Only ideas that have a very high probability of being an important part of the Bitcoin economy should be implemented, because that is all we have time for, and those are the only ideas worth risking Bitcoin on. The proof that ideas aren't scarce is that anybody can make their own altcoin at any time. There are hundreds, and every one of them is a bad idea from people who don't understand the cumulative benefits of cooperation. Since entrepreneurs don't understand Bitcoin very well yet, it is easy to dazzle them with technobabble and funnel investments into flawed projects like ProtoShares, Mastercoin, and Ethereum that have a very low probability of furthering Bitcoin adoption to any significant degree. There is no real reason to keep secrets, because the more that everyone knows about what everyone else is building, the more easily they can decide what the Bitcoin economy most needs of them. Everything about a business can be done openly for the benefit of the entire industry. Product development, future plans, market research, finances, everything except private customer data, which shouldn't be collected anyway beyond the bare minimum. We need open business and open businesses. Entrepreneurship as a collaborative scientific enterprise. In an open business world, less experimentation is necessary to produce a workable system than among other businesses, because there is no reason to keep secrets from one another. All trial and error should immediately benefit all the other Bitcoin entrepreneurs, so that everyone can more easily figure out the most effective way to work. Open business, as a generally accepted best practice, would have eliminated terrible businesses like Mt. Gox and Butterfly Labs early on. But even that would have been too late. Everything possible should be done to try to eliminate ideas before they can turn into failed businesses. That means sharing all ideas with the community and investing in nothing that does not already have widespread community support. Much of the Bitcoin world already works very openly. Lots of terrible ideas get shot down all the time in the bitcointalk.com forums. All the software is open source. However, more is required. Bitcoin entrepreneurship should be run more like scientific research than a gold rush or an internet bubble. There should be more open research into the future Bitcoin economy, complete with peer review and consensus over which ideas are the most useful and important. Investment should focus on ideas that already have been vetted by the community. It should be considered reprehensible for startups to invent their own cryptographic algorithms. It is too much of a waste of resources to test ideas in experiments with real businesses. All business models ought to be carefully critiqued beforehand, and only the most necessary ones that we have time for should be created. This is not central planning. It is consensus-based entrepreneurship. No one shall be forced to follow any idea at all. It is simply in everyone's best interest to cooperate. If I am right, then soon investors will learn to back only heavily vetted ideas, and entrepreneurs will as well. In the early Renaissance, mathematics was practiced in secret, and mathematicians carefully guarded their own discoveries, because a mathematician's career depended on being able to show patrons that they could solve problems other mathematicians could not. However, in 1545, Girolamo Cardano sparked a new trend with Ars Magna, the first published work to include the general solutions of the cubic and quartic equations. He even included secret work with citation by Niccolò Fontana Tartaglia, which Cardano had promised not to reveal. Gradually, mathematics transformed into a tradition characterized by publication rather than secrets. Open access publishing is now demanded in mathematics and science, but entrepreneurship is in its renaissance still. Conclusion. In a low-growth economy, one grows rich by carefully leveraging one's skills and assets so as to negotiate the most profitable trades. In other words, wealth comes from performing better than everyone else. It makes sense to guard closely any edge that one might have, whereas in a high-growth economy, wealth comes from doing as well as everyone else. It is more difficult to improve one's state relative to everyone else than to enjoy the overall growth that improves everybody's state. In a post-singularity world, everything should be expected to grow at a phenomenal rate, similar to the growth of the Bitcoin economy today. Thus, I would expect the attitude of sharing and collaboration should apply generally. The Bitcoin world understands this instinctively, but needs to take it to its logical conclusion. The entire Bitcoin economy needs to be open-sourced. This is how to make Bitcoin succeed most quickly and with the least effort, which is the best outcome for everyone. Let's get to work. So what do you think about this? From my vantage point in early 2025, I see that despite the value of Bitcoin, it is still a relatively small group of people, and it is somewhat undercapitalized. It seems that any given blockchain or AI project is able to much more easily secure funding and investment than almost any Bitcoin business. VCs seem to throw money at anything with the word AI in it, but they are reluctant when it comes to investing in the new form of money itself. Perhaps because Bitcoin by design is resistance money. It is ideological to a degree. It doesn't have the profile which generates yield, which can be IPO'd or acquired. It does not have any function other than being better money. As a capital allocator or business person, if you don't understand this, then you probably don't understand Bitcoin and are quite likely to dismiss it entirely because it doesn't fit into your worldview. For those who do understand how Bitcoin changes everything, we know that every sat is valuable and every Bitcoiner is part of this project. There is definitely Bitcoin capital out there investing in Bitcoin projects, but we don't have unlimited resources, yet we face the most well-funded institutions in the world, nation-state governments. So how does this relate to business then? Kraywitz talks about the idea of consensus-based entrepreneurship and of open business. His concern seems to be that there is not enough time or resources to waste on things that are not going to work out. It's understandable from his perspective. In 2014, the Mt. Gox exchange collapse must have seemed like a huge setback at the time. The underlying sentiment of entrepreneurship as a collaborative scientific enterprise seems to say that we should share absolutely everything we are working on, nip bad ideas in the bud early so that we can talk through great ideas and make them happen. This is interesting, but I wonder if it ignores the reality of the way businesses come about, to solve problems and respond to situations through the use of labor and capital. Ultimately, any business is about time, place, and opportunity, and in identifying and successfully responding to an opportunity, you should be rewarded with profit. Plenty of business people today will freely share their knowledge as mentors if you just ask them, because the idea and the knowledge is not enough on its own. You have to put in the proof of work and give things a go, risk your capital, and more than likely pivot. Planning and discussion about what should be a good business idea can often become a good excuse for not actually doing anything. Simulating reality or talking about it is inferior to engaging with the world and actually building something. Ask any business owner. It's about execution and trying things out. People often don't know what they want until you build it for them, and in doing so you test the market and you test boundaries. There are winners and losers. With any business, there will be unique knowledge or intelligence that you likely do not want to share with others. There will be things that are special to your situation or are otherwise not able to be reproduced, even if someone else were to try and do it. A lot of business is non-fungible. I don't think this is a criticism of what Kraywitz has written, though. I think it is important to share knowledge and be collaborative, to be helpful to others generally. Instead, I think we need to look closer at the relationship between entrepreneurial business and Bitcoin. Fundamentally, the Bitcoin network is open source. There is no moat or privileged relationship that can be leveraged within Bitcoin because there is no anointed territory or central authority to start with. It is only when you start interacting with the legacy system that you encounter gatekeepers, regulators, trusted authorities. All of these lead to corporate empires and monopolies forming. One of the classic Bitcoin business models is the Bitcoin exchange. Since the early days, Bitcoin exchanges have existed at the demarcation point between the old world and the new world. Certainly, Bitcoin exchanges are a good thing. They help bring more people onto the network. They can innovate the onboarding and the service, and ideally get people's Bitcoin into self-custody. But the business itself is dictated not by Bitcoin, but by fiat. Not everyone can start a Bitcoin exchange. It's a highly regulated area, and there are often chosen winners in a jurisdiction. Sharing best practices and knowledge can be useful to others, but when it comes to the specifics of getting bank account access, navigating local laws, and negotiating with regulators and other factors, there is a whole lot of stuff under the surface that is maybe not so easy to share, or at the very least requires some delicacy. If we go closer to Bitcoin ethos, something like a peer-to-peer exchange in an open source way, things become interesting. You can build a project without any permission, but you probably can't talk about it publicly, and it maybe becomes difficult to build relationships or partnerships locally as the project exists in a legal grey zone. The service is closer to Bitcoin and further from fiat, but maybe there is less of a business edge here. You can still charge a fee for this service, but to me it feels more like a Bitcoin utility than a Bitcoin business. Even when it comes to Bitcoin mining, where there is a lot of investment happening, you are faced with a global free market and competition from every corner of the earth with tight margins. Maybe the more apt framing is that a lot of miners are not so much Bitcoin businesses and more like energy companies. There is maybe even less incentive to share what you know and where you are getting your cheap power from and how you are operating. So I wonder if there is a spectrum where the closer to a pure Bitcoin utility you become, that is, things that are related to sending and receiving Bitcoin, the tighter the profit margins become, with the very best Bitcoin stuff being free and open source. Within Bitcoin, there are, of course, some physical products that have become business lines and cannot be completely free, specifically mining equipment, wallets, and nodes. These things can be commercialized as commodities, but then again, they can also be built and operated yourself. They are functional parts of the network, and so are also Bitcoin utilities. Some of these products have strong brands and successful businesses behind them. Many of them are open source too, which is pretty awesome. But it is still quite a tough business to be in. The market for all of these things is always going to be in proportion to the total Bitcoin market. Someone only needs a hardware wallet once they have Bitcoin. Anything software-based is, of course, going to trend towards being free. This leaves perhaps only the exchanges and maybe some financial service products, which are able to bring in totally new participants to the network and charge a fee. But again, a lot of these services rely on business confidentiality, regulation, and all of that fiat world stuff that stops it being open source and collaborative in the way the article discusses. I wonder if really what Kraywitz is getting at is that if we are to build anything that is a Bitcoin utility, the best approach is to be collaborative and open source so that others can improve it and add to the project, and so that we can verify the product for ourselves. If it's a physical product, maybe you can even sell it for a profit, but the market will likely be limited to the existing Bitcoiners. But what about trying to build new businesses and new markets? How can you build a business that helps bring new people into Bitcoin? Perhaps another way we can frame this whole thing is that instead of thinking about Bitcoin businesses, maybe we can instead think about businesses that are owned by Bitcoiners. Let's flip it. What does a US dollar business look like? What does a British pound business look like? They are called banks and trusted financial institutions, right? But in the open ocean of Bitcoin, there is no regulatory niche to hide in because it is a global permissionless network. Anyone can be their own bank. The disintermediation of money by Bitcoin is perhaps the key piece here. Maybe there isn't a moat to be built at all. If we think of the Bitcoin network as a utility that simply helps people send value to each other better than before, it seems logical that perhaps that same disintermediation means there isn't much surface area to build a business there in the first place. When you use Bitcoin, the overhead of the legacy financial system is gone. You just send value now. For business owners and entrepreneurs out there who are solving problems for other people in whatever field or industry they specialize in, they can just use and accept Bitcoin. They can save in Bitcoin. For businesses owned by Bitcoiners, there is a time, place, and occasion for their product or service, either local or global, with some combination of factors that gives them a unique selling proposition. There is a profit motive and the chance to be enterprising. Maybe they even have a moat or regulatory capture which they want to defend, and they don't want to share everything with their competition. They can be helpful and give advice if they want, but they don't have to share all the details. Just by using and accepting Bitcoin, they are helping to increase the network effect of Bitcoin and its adoption. Maybe the speculative philanthropy that Kraywitz speaks of can be reimagined as such businesses who, having made their own success in their own field, share Bitcoin with others. Maybe they donate to Bitcoin open source projects and support the network as a whole and contribute to the Bitcoin Commons as they see fit. Perhaps at a high level we can consider ourselves all part of the startup that is Bitcoin. We spend a bit of our free time working on it maybe, but our main job is still what we do best, and that is what puts food on the table. Our equity is the Bitcoin that we have, and our dividends are the increase in the purchasing power we get over time as Bitcoin monetizes into the world's future money. The fact that there is no clear and easy way to be a gatekeeper or to extract rent in the Bitcoin space itself is part of the revolution. Now, of course, the work of open source collaborative projects is incredibly important, and the question of open source business models and entrepreneurial strategies is an ongoing one that people have different thoughts on. In terms of Bitcoin businesses, though, maybe in the long run there are just businesses run by Bitcoiners, delivering good products and services and solving problems for people. But one of the problems they won't have to solve is money, because Bitcoin fixes this. Thank you for listening. I am Cody Ellingham, and that was The Transformation of Value. I am keen to hear what you think. Maybe there is other ways of looking at this or nuance that I might have missed. I'm always keen to hear new thoughts and perspectives. Send me an email at hello@thetransformationofvalue.com and I will get back to you.